The last time that we talked, we were able to cover Genesis chapter 31, dealing with Jacob, how he ended up having this issue with Laban. And remember how he stayed with Laban some 20 years there. He served for his first wife, which was Leah, and then Rachel another 7 years, 14. And then he said, for 6 more years, he started to amass his wealth. Remember, he had nothing when he got there. And so 20 years goes by, and now this man is loaded. We're going to find out in chapter 32, because he gives gifts to his brother Esau, and it's a massive amount of gifts. And that means he still got so much more that he can part with some of this. So let's go ahead and take a look at chapter 32. And by the way, if you can see the board behind me, remember, he started way up here in Padan Aram, or Haran, the Bible calls it. He came down this way, going back home, and he knows that Esau is going to be down here as well. There's a land down here on the bottom part, and this is going to be called Edom. And Edom is where Esau is located, his brother. And he is going to fill up this land. Matter of fact, there's going to be kings. There'll be leaders. They call them dukes, like the Duke of whatever, you know. But the Duke in the Hebrew Bible, it means a chief leader. But there's also kings. So Edom is going to be a massive population of people related to Jacob, to Esau and Jacob's brother. So as he is coming down this way, he is going to stop here, and he knows that he's getting close to Esau right here. So as he's coming down, he knows that he's going to be having to face Esau. All right, so take a look at chapter 32 and verse 1. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. Now stop right there. The first thing we see is the angels of God are going to meet Jacob. And so that's interesting, because as Jacob is coming back now, remember, we just talked about how he stopped with Laban and made that covenant, that Mizpah prayer. Remember that last week? And now he's on his own. He has no help. He has no one to help him. He has no connection with anybody back in where Laban's at. Now he's just on his own. And so he needs some encouragement. And so in verse 1, the angels of God are going to meet him. Verse 2, when Jacob saw them, he said, "This is God's host." And he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And that's what this is right here. So he's right about in this area, and Mahanaim, as he's coming down. Now he knows that Esau's coming. Remember, the last time that he was with Esau, the last thing he did with Esau is, remember, he deceived Isaac and he got Esau's blessing. And so Esau said, well, next time I see him, I'm going to kill him. So 20 years has gone by, and he does not know if Esau is still hating him. He doesn't know if Esau wants to kill him. Vengeance, revenge, how long people can keep revenge in their heart. He doesn't know what's going to happen yet. So he's a little bit concerned. There is no Facebook, to find out, hey, how he's been doing with his family. He doesn't know anything about Esau. As far as Jacob's concerned, Esau doesn't know about Jacob. They just have not had any communication for 20 years. So you think time heals, doesn't it? Time can heal. That's true, but when it's bitterness and revenge, sometimes it gets pretty bad. So let's take a look at what's going to happen. So Jacob is a little bit concerned. He sent messengers before him to Esau his brother unto the land of Seir, the country of Edom. So what he does is he's in Mahanaim, and he sends messengers down this way to Edom. I want to send messengers to Esau. So verse 4, he commanded them, saying, "Thus shall ye speak unto my lord Esau, thy servant Jacob saith thus, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed there until now." Basically 20 years. "And I have oxen and asses and flocks, men servants and women servants. I've sent to tell my lord that I may find grace in thy sight." So he says this to Esau to say, hey, I've been gone for 20 years and the Lord's blessed me. I want you to give me grace. Will you give me grace? Now what he's meaning is, will you give me something that I do not deserve? That's what grace is, right? God giving to us something we do not deserve. So when he says to Esau, will you give me grace? Will you give me something that I don't deserve? And he doesn't deserve it. Remember how he tricked Esau? He got the blessing from the dad before Esau got his blessing and the whole thing. So he's wanting grace so that, don't kill me, right? So verse 6, the messengers returned to Jacob saying, well, we came to thy brother Esau, and he comes to meet you with 400 men. Now stop there just for a second. Now Esau's down here in Edom. He gets the message from Jacob, and now he says, okay, I want to meet my brother. And he comes with 400 men. Now, why would he come with 400 men? Now, let that sink in just for a minute. When you travel, yeah, okay, sometimes there can be bandits. There can be people along the way that would want to harm you or hurt you. But 400 men, that's a lot of men for protection. Or is he bringing this because he's going to kill him? He's going to kill Jacob, and he wants to meet him with any forces that Jacob might have. I'm going to kill this man. So it may be that Esau's thinking, we're going to have a battle, and I'm going to kill my brother. We don't know that yet. We just know he's coming with 400. So look at verse 7. Obviously, Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. So he's thinking, oh my goodness, why is he coming with 400? He divided the people that was with him and the flocks and the herds and the camels into two bands, two separate categories. He said, if Esau come to the one company and smite it, so he's thinking Esau is going to come to attack, then the other company which is left will escape. So then now what are you going to do? I have nowhere to turn. I have no army. I just have my family, my servants, and all of this stuff that God's given me. All these camels and asses and sheep and goats and all of this stuff. What am I going to do? So look at the verse 9. Jacob now has learned something over 20 years. He's learned to trust the Lord. He saw God's blessings on his life at Laban's house when he got all those possessions. He saw that God did that. And so rather than pay armies to come help him, which he could have done because he's got all kinds of money, instead he goes to God, and this is what he should do. So verse 9, notice the prayer. Verse 9 says, and Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, the God of my father Isaac, the Lord which said unto me, return unto thy country, to thy kindred, and I will deal well with thee. So he's the one that, remember, God told him, I want you to leave Laban and come back home. And so he's taking God at his word now. Verse 10, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies. Now look at the next phrase. And of all the truth. I thought that was an interesting phrase right there. I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies and of all the truth, which thou hast showed unto thy servant. For with my staff I passed over this Jordan, and now I am become two bands. See, remember when he left? Remember he left Beersheba a long time ago? And then he went up to Bethel. Right there is where he had that vision of the angels going up to heaven and descending on that ladder. So he was there, and then he goes across, he goes all the way up there, and he's been up there for 20 years. It was at this place at Bethel where God spoke to him and gave him that vision that it's going to be okay. He said, you will be my God. I will give you my tithe. I will worship you if you'll bring me back to this place. 20 years goes by now. He says, I left with just my staff. Now I'm coming back, and I have two bands of possessions. I have so much. You've blessed me. So here I am, getting ready to go back across Jordan, but before I make it, my brother's coming to kill me. That's what he's thinking. So verse 11. I want to go back, though. Look at verse 10. I am not worthy of the least of all thy mercies and of all the truth. I want you to highlight that because something about Jacob, he was a deceiver, wasn't he? Yeah. He was a deceiver. He was a supplanter. The truth was really the farthest thing away from his life. He wasn't a truthful man. He lied about being Esau when he deceived Isaac. And then even when it came to Laban, lying was part of Laban's life with Jacob, wasn't it? As far as Rachel and Leah were concerned, that was a deception. And then and you can argue the point that whenever he was taking the cattle from Laban and purposely causing one to conceive over the other, God blessed that, but that was deception as well. So as far as Jacob is concerned, I think it's interesting that he says, and of the truth. God had now started working in Jacob's life where truth matters. And by the way, truth does matter. It matters to tell the truth and be truthful with people. Be truthful to yourself. Don't lie to yourself. And so Jacob's realizing this, and he says, you have showed me the truth, and then you showed me your blessing. So verse 11, I pray thee, deliver me, I pray thee, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he will come and smite me and the mother with the children. Remember, he's got 2 wives and 2 concubines. Let's take a look up here. Remember, he loved Rachel first and wanted to marry her, but he ended up with Leah, right? Remember that? Then he had Rachel. Rachel was barren, could not have children, so Leah starts having all these kids. So she had Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, the 4 boys, right off the bat. The 2 best friends are going to be Simeon and Levi. Look at these guys right here. They are brothers. They're like best friends. They're going to be in a lot of trouble. They do a lot of bad things together, okay? And later on, when we find Joshua divides the land up of Israel, you'll find the 2 tribes that do not have any land are Simeon and Levi. Levi becomes the priests over all of Israel, and they have cities, but they're not given any land. Simeon does not have his own land. He actually takes part of Judah and has an inheritance in Judah's land. And I think that's going to be because of a story. If we have time, I'll get to it today about those 2 brothers. So here are they all. And the wives are Rachel, Leah, and then the concubines, Bilhah and Zilpah. He's got 11 sons and 1 daughter, Dinah. Okay, so all this, and he realizes, I don't want them all to be killed. Verse 12 now. You, God, thou said, I will surely do thee good, make thy seed as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. He says, I have 11 kids, 11 sons and 1 daughter, but that's not a multitude. So he's basically saying, God, please help me. So take a look what happens now. Verse 13. He lodged there that same night. He took of that which came to his hand, a present for Esau his brother. Now what he does is very wise, very interesting, isn't it? Now I want you to get this in your mind. Look at verse 14. He takes 200 she-goats, female goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their colts, 40 kine or cattle, 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. He delivered them into the hand of his servants, and every drove, that means every section by themselves, and said unto his servants, pass over before me, and put a space betwixt drove and drove. He commanded the foremost, saying, when Esau my brother meeteth thee, and asks thee, saying, whose art thou, whither thou goest, and whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, these are they be thy servant Jacob. It's a present for you. And by the way, he's behind us. So he commanded the second, the third, and all that followed, all these different droves. Verse 21, so went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. Now let me tell you what's going on here. What he did, he had all of these animals. He had asses and camels, males and females, and goats and sheep and cows and all this kind of stuff. What he did was, he said, takes the servant, and he says, I want you to take 200 of these. And behind you is going to be 20 of these. Behind you is going to be so many of these, the males. And then behind you is going to be the females. And behind you is going to be this category, and the males and the females. So it's a drove is a category. So it's the idea of one after the other with space in between. Now here, get this in your mind. Here comes Esau from Edom. He's going up to meet him, and before he gets to Jacob, he sees this servant, and he's got, what does he have? 200 goats. And the servant says, here's 200 goats. And Esau says, what in the world? And then he says, we want you to have these. And so Esau's thinking, okay. And then behind him is coming more. And he says, this is a present for you. And Esau says, okay. And then behind him is another. And he goes a little further and another, a little further and another. What would you do if you started getting gifts like that? If you were mad as a hornet and you're coming to kill Jacob, and then one after another, you're getting these presents from your brother. And they're huge presents, many animals and camels. And you're thinking to yourself, what is all of this? And each time they say, oh, by the way, your brother, Jacob, is behind us. And you can see how this softens the blow. It starts to work on your heart, doesn't it? And this is what Jacob is doing. He is trying his best to appease the revenge he thinks that Esau has against him. Okay? So that's the day before they meet. So we know that there's a lot of space in between. I would think maybe even hours. He meets the first one with the 200, and then an hour goes by, and here comes somebody else, and an hour goes by, and here comes somebody else, and Esau's thinking, man, this is unreal. Well, now nightfall takes place. Esau is not to Jacob yet, and so they decide to bed down that night. So verse 22, the Bible says, he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants and his 11 sons and passed over the ford Jabbok. And there is a little river that's right in this area called Jabbok, like a little creek. And he sends over the women, but Jacob, verse 24, stays by himself. And he wrestles with a man with him until the breaking of the day. Now I want to talk about this guy for a minute. The Bible says he wrestles with a man. Now later on we know that that's going to be God, right? You're going to see that in a minute. But he's in the form of a man. We call that an anthropomorphic expression or a theophany, where God is in the form of a man. And so he's going to be wrestling with Jacob. Now it's very interesting to me when you read this story. Jacob is wrestling with a man. Now think about this. He's not wrestling with God. He doesn't think it's God, not yet. He's wrestling with a man in his mind. Now maybe it's in reality. We're not sure if it's actually happening or it's a vision. I think it's actually happening. He sees this man and he starts to wrestle with him. And I want you to get in your mind that this could be a picture of Jacob wrestling the only man in his life that's in this context that he wrestles with always, and that is Esau. Okay? This is not Esau, but I'm going to show you something here where in Jacob's mind, he's got to deal with Esau. So that night, he is scared of Esau. He fears Esau. He wonders what Esau's going to do to him. And so all night long, he's wrestling with this man. Okay? Now, what did he do? He gave gifts to this man. One after another and after another and after another. And what he's wanting, I want you to give me grace. Give me forgiveness and give me grace. Give me your blessing is what he's saying to Esau, right? Now watch what happens with this man. So in verse 24, he wrestles with him until the breaking of the day. All night long, he's wrestling with this man. Verse 25, when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Now, who's the he here? Who's winning? Well, the point is that Jacob's wrestling with this guy, and the Bible says, and when he saw, the man saw that Jacob was winning, that Jacob was pinning him down, he says, I'm going to touch the hollow of your thigh. And so he touched the hollow of his thigh, and his thigh is out of joint. Miss Di, you know all about thighs being out of joint, don't you? Okay. So your joint's messed up. Now look at verse 26. He said, let me go, for the day breaketh. And he said, I will not let thee go except thou bless me. That is Jacob saying to this man, I'm not letting you go. Jacob is prevailing. Jacob is winning. And he says to the man, you're going to bless me. I'm not going to let you go till you bless me. Now remember what Jacob was doing to Esau. He was giving him gift after gift after gift after gift. And he said, I want to find grace in your sight. And so he's wrestling with Esau in that sense. And so, verse 27, he said unto him, what is thy name? And he said, my name is Jacob. He said, verse 28, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. He says, Jacob, you have prevailed. And I'm going to change your name to Israel. Now, by the way, look up here. We know that Jacob's kids, all of these kids, right, are the tribes of Israel. They are the 12 tribes. So, here are the 12 tribes, the 12 sons of who? Jacob. Jacob's name is changed to Israel. And that's when we say the 12 tribes of Israel, or the 12 sons of Israel. This is where this comes from, okay? All right, so keep on going now. Verse 29, Jacob asked him and said, tell me, I pray thee, thy name. And he said, wherefore is it that thou dost ask after my name? And he blessed him there. Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen the face of God face to face, and my life is preserved. So right here, this word Penuel or Peniel right here, this means the face of God. So when he was right there at the ford of Jabbok, he wrestles with this man and he says, I have seen the face of God. So he knows that this was God that he was wrestling with. And he passed over Penuel. The sun rose upon him, and he halted upon his thigh. And there's been a tradition, verse 32, the children of Israel eat not of the sinew which shrank of an animal which is upon the hollow of the thigh unto this day, because he touched the hollow of Jacob's thigh and the sinew that shrank. Okay? And so, interesting story. We're not done with it, though, because I want to show you more about this man that he wrestled with and how it relates to Esau in just a minute. Okay, so far, we know that Jacob has wrestled. He's afraid of Esau. He wrestles all night before he meets Esau. He sees this man. He wrestles with the man, prevails against him in wrestling, pins him down. His name is changed to Israel. All this is happening now. And now chapter 33. Chapter 33 says, Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau came, and with him 400 men. Now they're all coming. And he divided the children unto Leah and unto Rachel and unto the two handmaids. So he says, I'm the last one now. I've given him all these gifts. And so now I'm dividing my family in two. And so he puts them with the mothers with the children. And notice what he does, verse 2. He put the handmaids and their children foremost, Leah and her children after, and Rachel and Joseph hindermost. So notice again, he takes the Bilhah and Zilpah, takes Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher, and puts them up front. Then he takes Leah and takes all of the kids, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and then Issachar and Zebulun and Dinah. And then comes Rachel and Joseph at the end. So again, he's still playing the favorites, isn't he? He's still playing the favorites. So at this point, that's going to be a problem from him later on as well. All right, verse 3. He passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Now, here comes Esau. Now watch. Esau's coming with the 400 men, but also he has all of those gifts. All of those camels and asses and he-goats and she-goats and servants that Jacob had already given him. And then he sees his brother. Finally, after 20 years, he sees the children, and then the women, the children, the women, the children, the women, the children, and the women, and Rachel finally. And then finally is Jacob. The Bible says that as Jacob got closer, he bows down 7 times. 7 times. Take a look at that again in verse 3. He passed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. See, Esau sees the gifts. He sees the humility in his brother. You see that? Now, there's an interesting verse in the book of Matthew that Jesus talks about. If you know that your brother is angry with you, then he says, before you come offer your gift to the altar, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to go to your brother and get that right, then come offer your gifts. I think it's very interesting that God is showing us something here about Jacob, that before God can really bless Jacob like he wants to bless him, he's going to have to get this right with his brother, isn't he? And this is what he's doing. He is getting it right. He's humbling himself in repentance. Hey, I just want your grace. I just want your forgiveness. And this is what he's trying to do. Okay? And so Esau, verse 4, ran to meet him. He gets off his camel, no doubt that what he was riding. 400 men are with him. He jumps down. He runs to meet him. And notice what he does. He embraces him. He fell on his neck. And he kissed him. And he wept. You see that? Interesting, isn't it? Matter of fact, now listen, the last time that Esau, now by the way, who is Esau? He is a man of the field. He is a hunter. Remember this? He's the one that will go out and kill and bring back the food. He is a man's man. He's not the kind of guy that's going to be hugging and kissing and weeping. Okay? But do you see, after 20 years, and even though he may be upset, wants to kill Jacob, because of what Jacob does, and we can all learn this lesson here, Jacob is doing everything he can to make things right. With the presence, with the gift, with the humility, and all of that. You know what it does? It affects Esau. And you know what happens after this? Never again do you find conflict between Jacob and Esau. There's a little bit between the tribes later on, but as far as Jacob and Esau are concerned, Esau never tries to kill him. It's gone after this. So that is a great lesson for us to learn. But we're not done yet, so let's keep on going. In verse 5, he lifted up his eyes and saw the women and the children and said, who are those with thee? And he said, the children which God hath graciously given thy servant. Then the handmaidens came near, they and their children. They bowed themselves. Leah also with her children bowed themselves. After Joseph and Rachel, they bowed themselves. And he said, what meanest thou by all this drove, all of these things that came? He said, to find grace in your sight. Remember that? Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep thou that thou hast unto thyself. And we're going to find later on that Esau does have enough. God has blessed Esau with all of this land and children and grandchildren and kings and wealth. He's got a lot of stuff as well because he's also a descendant of Abraham. Abraham's children are going to be blessed. Jacob more. But even the secondary blessings of Abraham is beyond our comprehension. And Esau is getting that. So keep on reading now. Esau says, you keep that stuff. Well, no, Jacob says, verse 10, no, or nay, I pray thee, if now I have found grace in thy sight, then receive my present. Now notice, if I have found grace, see, if I have found grace, receive my present. See, he says, I don't want your gift. And what Esau's trying to do here is trying to make him make a decision. If I have found grace in your sight, if you truly have forgiven me, please take this. If he doesn't take it, it may be a sign that I'm just putting on right now. I'm going to kill you later. No, please take it. So if I found grace in thy sight, then receive my present at my hand. Now watch. For therefore I have seen thy face. Thy face, how? As though I had seen the face of God, and thou wast pleased with me. Now, go back to when he said, I have seen God face to face. That was when he wrestled with that man. Remember that? That's why I look at this as his wrestling had to do with Esau as well. And when he prevailed against the man, and the man blessed him, what he's saying to Esau is, I want you to bless me. I want you to take my gift, and I want you to forgive me. Let me have grace in your sight, for when I saw your face, it was like I saw the face of God. So he's relating all this together, that this is what needs to happen. So verse 11, take, I pray thee, my blessing that is brought to thee, because God hath dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. He urged him, and then he took it. And he said, let us take our journey, let us go, and I will go before thee. And he said unto him, my Lord knoweth that the children are tender, the flocks, herds with the young are with me. If men should overdrive them, one day they'll all die. Let my Lord, I pray thee, pass over before his servant, and I will lead on softly, according as the cattle that goeth before me, and the children be able to endure until I come unto my Lord unto Seir. Esau said, let me now leave with thee some of the folk, the 400 men that are with me. And he said, what needeth it? Let me find grace in the sight of my Lord. He keeps saying that. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. So Esau says, okay, I'll take your stuff, but come on home with me. Come on. Well, Jacob does not want to go down here to Edom. That's where he wants him to go. But Jacob doesn't want to go there. God said, I want you to go back to Bethel. I want you to go back to your home. So he knows he needs to go this way, but Esau wants him to go that way, and he says no. So he's trying to help him understand that, and that's exactly what happens. Finally, Esau lets him go completely. And as far as we can tell, there's really not much more communication they ever have again with each other. Okay? So Jacob journeyed to Succoth and built him a house, made booths for his cattle. Therefore, the name of that place is called Succoth. So Jacob does not go this way. He goes this way. And he goes over here to Succoth, right there. And while he's there, he makes booths for his cattle, because he's going to be living not far away. You don't want all your cattle and all of your thousands of them. Remember, he's got a massive amount. So he builds stables. You don't want to live near your stables, because we know how that smells, right? So especially when you have thousands and thousands of animals, so you have to have a place for them. So he stops here, and he says, I'm going to build me some booths here, some stables, and he calls it the name Succoth. Now, Succoth means stables, booths. So he does that. So he creates a city. On the way, he just stops, and he builds these things. And he says, this is where I'm going to keep all of my animals, but I'm going to move to Shechem, so which is down the road, maybe a few miles, maybe a day's journey or so away from all of his stuff, and he's going to leave his animals there. Just like, remember when Jacob took care of Laban's stuff? Jacob lived days away from where Laban lived with all of the animals. That's just what they were doing. He had so much stuff. So look at verse 18. Jacob came to Shalem, a city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Padan Aram and pitched his tent before the city. He bought a parcel of a field where he had spread his tent at the hand of the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money, and there he erected an altar and called it Elohi Israel, the God of Israel. Now keep this in mind. He leaves. Here is Esau going down here. He goes across and he starts a brand new homestead in Shechem. He buys the land. He doesn't just take it, he buys it for 100 pieces of money, probably silver. He buys it, and then he keeps all of his animals over here. He is living here. Now, one thing we do not know, and we're not told, but this is probably what happened. Remember who lives in Beersheba? Abraham and Isaac. Abraham is probably dead by now, but here in Beersheba, Isaac, his old father, and his mother, Rebekah. Now they are very old. Jacob is probably in the 160 range right now. Isaac is probably 160s range. Rebekah younger. But what do? I think that they move up here with him. With Jacob. Jacob comes back. He's got all of these possessions. And then his family, his mom and dad, come up too. Now, they're still older. Matter of fact, Isaac will die at 180. That's still a long way to go, okay? So they're all there now, and they move into this area called Shechem. Well, Shechem is owned by the name of a man, and you'll see right there, named Hamor. And that brings us to chapter 34. And let me just introduce this to you. In chapter 34, we have the story of the only girl born to Jacob, and that is Dinah. Now remember, the last word of chapter 33 says, El Elohi Israel. Jacob makes an altar right here and calls it this name, and it means the God of Israel. He's actually calling himself Israel now, the God of Israel, and he's going to worship him right here. It's a powerful statement. So all this is going great until one day Dinah, the only daughter, right here, and she is the daughter of Leah. She is out walking around the city. Now, when I say city, remember again, these are spread out areas, but she does go to the area of Hamor, the one that owns all the land, and Jacob bought a parcel of land from him. So Dinah goes out, and while she's out, take a look at chapter 34. Shechem is the son of Hamor. So that's why this whole area is called Shechem, because Hamor's sons inherited all this land, and this is called Shechem. Well, he bought this land from Hamor, so this is called Shechem. So that's where he lives. So when the real boy named Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her, he lay with her, and he defiled her. He raped her. So he takes Dinah and he rapes her. But he's in love with Dinah, right? So as you keep on reading, verse 3, his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. And so you know the story. Shechem speaks to his father and says, I want this girl to be my wife. Well, Hamor says, well, she belongs to all these people outside of town out there. They got thousands of camels and asses and all of that. They got a lot of stuff. And you want to marry his daughter? Well, I'll see if I can talk to him. So here's the story, verse 6. The Bible says, Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out unto Jacob to commune with him. So he leaves the area, goes outside to where Jacob is located, and they make a deal. I want you to give me this daughter. Verse 8, he says, the soul of my son Shechem longeth for your daughter. I pray you give her to wife. Verse 9, now notice the verse here. Make you marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. We want to intermarry. We want your men to marry our daughters. We want our daughters to marry your men. And by the way, the law hasn't said anything about that yet, but we know that that's not right. God wants Jacob to be a separate nation. And so he says, you stay with us, we'll dwell, we'll trade, get possessions. Verse 10, Shechem said unto her father and unto her brethren, let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye say unto me, I'll do anything you want. I'll do anything. Even any dowry, I'll give it to you. Verse 12. So look at verse 13. The sons of Jacob. Now who are the sons of Jacob? All these guys. Okay. These are brothers. And this is their only sister. Now let me ask you a question. If you got 11 brothers and you're the only sister, what does that make you? That makes you spoiled. That makes you the princess. That makes you, man, you don't mess with my little sister, right? This is what's going to happen. And she is the little sister. Look at the age here. Look at these guys up here. Reuben is a man by now. He's in his 20s or 30s. And you got all of these guys. And she's way down here. She is probably 15, 16 years old. And you got brothers that are in their 30s, maybe even their 40s. And you find out that a man has raped your little sister. What are you going to do? Okay. So here's the problem. So they're going to go along with this only to deceive them. So verse 13, the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor's father deceitfully. And they said, because he defiled Dinah, their sister, they said, we cannot do this thing. We don't intermarry because we are circumcised. Remember that was the covenant with Abraham. You circumcise all your children to show you are a different people. So they say, you have to be circumcised. So they go along with it. If you want to marry Dinah, you and all of your people, if they're going to intermarry with us, you all have to be circumcised. Wow, what a request. And we'll become one people, verse 16, the very last phrase, and we will become one people. But if you'll not, then we're not going to do it. We'll just get up and go and be gone. So the young man deferred not to do the thing, verse 19, because he had delight in Jacob's daughter, and he was more honorable than all the house of his father. He's an honorable young man in that sense. He convinces everybody, all the men, to be circumcised. And you know what circumcision is. You know the process, and you know the pain that goes along with that. And so they all do this, and then the Bible says, after they did... Now, by the way, before we get to that point, I want you to see something, though. It wasn't just to marry Dinah. They saw the thousands of animals that Jacob had. They saw how wealthy this man was. Look what they say in verse 23. Shall not their cattle and their substance and every beast of theirs be ours? Only let us consent unto them, and they will dwell with us. Meaning, we will eventually have everything that he has. So that was their idea. So unto Hamor and unto Shechem they all hearkened, and every male was circumcised in the city. Verse 25. It came to pass on the third day when they were sore. They were recovering, but they were still not able to move around that much because of the pain. The two sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi. Now notice, these two guys, they are brothers from the same mother and same dad. Okay? They are same in age. They're very close in age, maybe a couple years apart. They are the oldest kids. The only one older than them is Reuben. And now they are going to do something terrible. Now, it's not just Simeon and Levi. Do you think two men can go into a city and kill all the men by themselves? Probably not. Remember, Jacob has a lot of servants. Simeon and Levi are leaders. They are princes of Jacob, if you will, and they have a lot of servants as well. What I'm guessing is that Simeon and Levi took all of their men servants with their swords, and they went in. When it says Simeon and Levi, it's probably talking about the men that were with those groups went in and killed everybody. And that's what happened. So take a look. They slew, verse 26, Hamor, Shechem, his son, with the edge of the sword. Verse 25 says, they slew all the males. Verse 28, or verse 27, they spoiled the city. Verse 28, they took their sheep, ox, asses, everything. Verse 29, all their wealth, all their little ones, and their wives, they took captive. They spoiled all that was in the house. Remember, this is the first that's ever happened in Jacob's life. He's never been this way. He's not a man of war. And for this to happen, the murder, the killing, and all of that, and then taking all the possessions for your own, this is just not what Jacob does. So he's pretty upset about the whole thing. And Jacob had said, verse 30, to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me to make me stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites, the Perizzites, I being few in number. They're going to come kill me now. And then they say, verse 31, and they said, should he deal with our sister as with a harlot? Now keep in mind now, remember how Jacob looks at his wives and looks at his children. Okay, keep that in mind. Who is Dinah? She is the daughter of who? Leah. Leah is the one he didn't want. And even to this point, we know that he disdains them. He loves them as a father does, but he doesn't keep them as the apple of his eye. Dinah is not the little princess to Jacob. Okay, and that's what he's saying is you're treating our daughter like my sister like a harlot. Later on, when Joseph gets the coat of many colors, remember how all the brothers treat Joseph? It's because Jacob treated Joseph differently. Who's Dinah? Well, she's part of the other guys, not Rachel. So there is this thing going on, and they're a little bit upset about that. And you're going to find that Simeon and Levi, like I said, are going to be judged for this. When Jacob gives his blessings at the end, he talks about these two kids, these two people. Okay? And so let's go on then. Verse 30, 31, they said, should he deal with our sister the harlot? Now, we'll just stop right there. I'll pick up next week, but Jacob then, he's got to figure out, what am I going to do? Everybody's going to try to kill me. So in chapter 35, he does leave the area. He's going to leave Shechem, and he's going to come back down to Bethel. And that's where he should have been anyway. He was told to go back to Bethel. That's where that ladder vision was, the angels ascending and descending. So when he comes back, why didn't he go to Bethel? He put the altar here and not there, the house of God. That's where he should have been. He will go there in chapter 35, and then God's going to start blessing him all over again. Okay? So all that happened in Shechem, really, you could almost say, was he out of the will of the Lord? Perhaps. I don't know. Okay? All right, we'll stop right there. Any questions? Any thoughts? Kind of weird stuff, isn't it? Some crazy stuff happening. A lot of lessons to learn. Everybody okay? Any questions? Any thoughts? Teresa? Can't hear you. I'm just seeing your face. Okay.
Lip read.
Lip read. I can't do that. Okay. All right, guys. Listen, like I said, next week we'll pick up again, and maybe some of you could come here. We'll do the webcamming again, but you're welcome to come next week if you want to, okay? Well, God bless you guys, and we'll be praying for you, and look forward to seeing you next time around, okay? All right. God bless. I'm going to stop this. And we are done.
Recording has stopped.
There we go.